Welcome to Healthy Births, Happy Babies, where we share tips, tools, and stories grounded in natural childbirth and parenting principles, so that instead of feeling overwhelmed and confused during this exciting time in your life, you feel safe, supported, and empowered in your childbirth and parenting journey. And now, here's your host, Dr. Jay Warren.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Healthy Births, Happy Babies. As usual, I am your host, Dr. Jay Warren. I am the Family Wellness Chiropractor and the Wellness Care Coordinator here at the CAP Wellness Center. And today we have another very special episode. I mean, I say that every time, I guess, but it's really valuable. If it wasn't valuable and special, we wouldn't be bringing it to you, right? So today we have Kimberly Johnson back. She was on an episode a few weeks ago talking about pelvic floor issues, and it was at the very end of that conversation we touched on a subject. And so for those of you listening, or if you haven't listened, you can hear part of that conversation. And that's about the postpartum period and what can be done to ease a woman into motherhood in a much gentler way and a much more supported way. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're bringing her back to really dive into that subject. She's quite the authority and very passionate about that. And I think that's going to be really helpful for you new mamas that are there or soon to be new mamas. And we'll get to that in a second, but let me take a time right now to thank our sponsor, the CAP Wellness Center, who makes this podcast possible. It's the CAP Wellness Center in Encinitas, California, that's assembled an incredible team of fully certified holistic health professionals that offer the very best in prenatal and postpartum wellness services. We offer acupuncture, chiropractic, massage, yoga, lactation support services, and a wide variety of birth education classes to ensure that you are fully able to experience the power of birth. So let me introduce Kimberly Johnson to you once again. Kimberly Johnson is a certified sexological bodyworker and near-certified somatic experiencing practitioner. She's also a single mom, a doula, a Rolfer, and a yoga teacher. She leads workshops internationally and virtually on the intersection of women's sexuality and spirituality, as well as holistic postpartum healing. After living in Brazil for 8 years, she now resides in San Diego, California, where she is in private practice, specializing in birth injury, birth trauma, and sexual healing. So with that, let's switch over to our conversation with Kimberly. Hello, Kimberly. Welcome back.
Hi, Jay.
How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing really good. I'm really excited for our conversation today, too. To reference things from last time for our listeners, as I said in the beginning of your intro, we've had a previous episode with you on, and we were talking about pelvic floor issues, and you were describing your sexology body work and how you help people with it. And if you haven't listened to that episode and that episode or topic resonates with you, go back into the listing in iTunes and listen to that, because Kimberly was able to share amazing information that will help you either if you're having that issue going on or more importantly to help prevent it during pregnancy. But the reason why I wanted to have you back, Kimberly, was because it came up a little bit in the conversation in the previous episode, but really it was after we'd finished and we were chatting afterwards. Something you said really stuck out in my mind, and that was this, where you had, I can't remember exact words, but you were talking about, say, in the 70s, there were all these pioneers in the natural birth movement that were really creating a new paradigm around how pregnancy could be regarded and how women can be empowered. And those things, fast forwarding to today, are much more commonplace that women have access to in a totally different way before those pioneers came about. And, CAP Wellness Center is a perfect example of that. It's a place that's been set up for women to be empowered, to have healthier births, healthier pregnancies, and bring our babies into the world much more safely. But what you said too was something about the postpartum period, and that's what our topic is going to be about today, where you were saying there's work to be done now that will help a woman ease and transition into motherhood after the baby is here much more easily and healthily and holistically, that fast forward 20 years from now will hopefully become commonplace. So that's what prompted you to be back here, and I would love to jump into that subject. But before we do all of that, and that was a very long intro, I realize, refresh our listeners if they hadn't listened to your previous episode, like who you are, what you're about, what you do, and then we'll jump right in.
Okay. My name's Kimberly Johnson, and I have a private practice here in Encinitas and Hillcrest, helping women prepare for birth and recover from birth and navigate this whole transition into motherhood physically, emotionally, spiritually, sexually, relationally. And I'm just kind of on a mission to illuminate this part of a woman's journey, many women's journeys, mothers' journeys, that tends to get pushed aside. And I really feel like when women have the care that they need and the support that they need in this period of new mothering, that we can really set into her own body and her own soul path, and then therefore that of the baby and that of her partner if she has one, and then our communities of healing and a chance for not only personal healing but also family healing and generational healing.
Beautiful. And it's a commonplace, or more of a commonplace term now, the concept of the fourth trimester. Right?
Yes.
Where that 3-month period postpartum is really another a gestational period of mom and dad connecting with baby, and how transitional and important of a place or a time that is. But at least in my experience, that fourth trimester period really is more of solely a parenting genre, or a feeling of like how to transition into parenthood, just in like how to bond with your baby. But what we're going to be talking about, we'll probably implement those kind of things as well, but also talking about how a woman can transition into kind of a new identity as a parent.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's, things like how to breastfeed and how to swaddle your baby are certainly a part of it. But what we're talking about is sort of the bigger picture of a woman's health, and kind of placing that as at least equally as important as the bonding experience, which is, it's really not separate, right? You can't separate those two, because, in a lot of cultures, there's even terms like mama toto, which means mother baby, that during that fourth trimester, there really isn't, it's sort of one body, one organism that's working together, because neither works well without the other. I mean, I've seen incredible things happen where I've been in a hospital in Rio where the mom and the baby are separate and after birth, because the baby's gone to be checked and the mom's having horrible cramping and they don't know why, and they're trying to give her pain relief for the cramping because she's already had the baby and it's worse than when she was in labor. And the minute the baby comes back in the room, the cramping totally stops. So there's just this necessity, this biological necessity that of course we can override, and we train ourselves to override all the time. But if we're really listening, there is this necessity for not only togetherness, but also a protection around that space, which is why I call this time like sanctuary time, because it's about creating an environment. Just like now more people know that to have a successful birth, thanks to Michelle O'Dunn and thanks to other birth pioneers, that we need conditions that facilitate a great birth. Well, we need many of those same conditions to create a space where a woman can gestate herself as a mother, as you mentioned.
Right, and I've seen time and time again that postpartum period is a real identity, I don't want to say identity crisis to put that word onto it, but it's a different integration of a parent, the individual, the parent, the partner, all of those things. It's a brand new identity that takes some time and some safe space to kind of explore and how to move forward within that.
Exactly. And whether or not we call it a crisis, in a culture where we don't have a lot of rites of passage built in, it feels like a crisis when you're letting go of something that is known
Very
and
well said.
we don't have community around, Cap Wellness Center is an example of a movement towards community. I see these like upwellings, don't know which is the right word, of an awareness that this is necessary and that women really need it. But I still have a lot of women contacting me that know that they need it, but they don't know it. They don't know how to go about it because they're so buried with breastfeeding challenges or, life, basically other kinds of questions that have pushed this identity piece to the bottom, when really this is the overarching conversation without an acknowledgement of the complete rearrangement that a woman is experiencing, because it's a physical rearrangement. No matter how the baby's born, it's an overhaul. And during the whole pregnancy, that's our culture has come to really glorify pregnancy. And now 25 years ago, women didn't wear form-fitting clothes when they're pregnant. Now it's like, no, wear a belt above the bump to accentuate your bump, and you get 1 million likes on your Facebook page when you post your profile picture. And then the baby comes, and all the attention's to the baby, and many women feel like they're kind of disposable. They're there to facilitate this amazing baby, and as long as the baby's okay, then they just have to deal with however they're feeling. Like, the baby's fine, so just let's move on now. And that's not at all the internal experience. And actually, for the 4th trimester, 3 months, I'm sure, like, you're recently a new parent, that's just the beginning. That's just really like 3 months, you're just coming out of the fog. You're just kind of coming back to even an understanding of who you might be, who this new incarnation might be.
Right, and that first 3 months, as you said, is a fog so many times with the sleep deprivation and, just all the newness that's there. And time and time again, I'm talking with parents and for myself, like, you happily do that, like if your little one's here and you're so happy to finally be a parent and you're jumping in. And as you said, that 3-month period, as you start coming out, the natural questions of, okay, well, what now? Like, who am I now as a parent, as a partner, and as an individual? And as you said, I thought that was really well said, that it's only viewed as a crisis if you're feeling alone in it and don't have resources to help navigate it. So or even the awareness, right? Because what happens, and I'm sure that you see this all the time, is women it's as if they feel like they got the rug pulled out from under them. Like, yes. Where's the they don't even feel like it's a conversation. Like, no one even, I never even heard that this was possible, that I could feel this way, Right. So how can like conversations like this, where we encourage women to listen when they're pregnant. I mean, ideally, right, this would be an intergenerational circle practice where girls who are just getting their period are sitting together with women who are menopausal, who are sitting together with women who've just had babies, so that everyone is sharing what their reality is at that moment. And then it's not so foreign to you when you're there, because you remember you heard that other person's story that was not just facts, but actually like part of their internal work that was happening at that time. Right.
And so I feel like that in our modern way, things like podcasts and articles and then literal physical centers are ways of bringing this back in.
Well, and I've seen time and time again too the guilt that is around not knowing, right? Mm-hmm. Or going through a struggle and feeling like, well, if I voice these things, I'm going to seem selfish, or that I don't want to be a mom, or that I don't know how to be a good mom. I mean, that's the most common thread, is that every parent I work with wants to be the best parent they can possibly be and give everything that they possibly can to their child. And coupled with that is a concern of like, I don't know how to do that necessarily, right? Mm. And so in this transition period afterwards, how do you recommend to the women that you work with to even just start being able to have the conversation and the awareness, let alone getting the tools and resources that they need to help with that transition?
Well, I think part of it starts with acknowledging that you're going to need a lot more help than you think you need.
Yeah.
So asking for help is a skill, and we tend to, especially in the US, we tend to think that if we can do it ourselves, we should do it ourselves, and we should give as much as like just basically drive until you're on empty, and then when you've got one drop left and you cannot handle it any longer, then you have to reach out. And I think it's really useful to think about, well, maybe I don't have to get totally depleted before I ask for help. Like, what would it be like to imagine that I could set myself up and even spoil myself? You know, we don't think about, most people hopefully, know that a newborn can't be spoiled. You can't hold it enough. You can't overfeed it. You know, like there's a regulatory capacity there. And in the first trimester, it can't survive without human interaction, human touch, other adults feeding it. A lot of the same is really true for the new mom. She needs skin-to-skin contact, not just with the baby, but with her partner or with someone else. She needs unconditional love and touch. She needs the company of other women. So practicing asking for help and assuming that you're going to need more help than you think sets yourself up afterwards so that, in the fog, it's hard to know what you need. You're in the fog, you're not feeling right, but you're not really sure what exactly you need. But if you set yourself up with resources ahead of time, I tell everyone to have a resource list and put it on their refrigerator. So on that resource list is a therapist. On the resource list is takeout menus, restaurants you can call that deliver. On that, I usually have a list of questions that are like, who can I call if I want to take a shower alone and I need someone to hold the baby? Who can I call if I just need to vent and cry? So that then that's just right out there on the refrigerator or wherever. And so your mind can just look at it, identify it, and use it rather than having to come out of a deeper place and be like, I just don't feel like myself, but I have no idea what to do. And, I recently talked to a woman who's 6 weeks postpartum, and she was alone in her house with her baby and had a difficult birth and was having tough time with breastfeeding based on some breast surgeries she'd had, and that was causing her to feel guilt about having had the breast surgeries, and now she can't feed her own baby because of the vanity that she had before. And all of this like really involved process around self-forgiveness and nurturing, and I said, well, who's cooking for you right now? And she's like, well, I am. And I'm like, okay, so you're making yourself 3 meals a day. Yeah. Are you still bleeding? Yes. Okay, so do you have anyone in your life who could help you? And she's like, oh, well, my mother-in-law is asking all the time. Like, she wants to help. And I'm like, okay, so can you ask her for help? And she's like, well, but I don't know if she's just asking just to be nice. And I'm like, well, why don't you assume that she actually really wants to help you, but she doesn't want to step on your toes and be overbearing because she's your mother-in-law. So she's offering, how about you ask her for that help? And she was like, oh, yeah. And it's not a complicated thing, but she just hadn't thought about it because she's been sleep deprived, trying to figure out her baby's breastfeeding issues, trying to deal with her own internal sadness about the loss of this potential loss of the relationship. That taking care of her emotional needs is like, it's just really hard. So thankfully she reached out to me and we put together a strategy of different ways she could reach out and things that would ease things. And another thing she learned is that she needed to ask, her husband was also willing to give her what she needed, but she wasn't really aware. So she realized, oh, when he comes home from work, I want him to take his shower first and rest a little bit, but then I need him to take the baby so that I can take a shower and I can brush my teeth, and maybe he can rub my feet for like 10 minutes. So troubleshooting some of those things ahead of time is really useful.
Right. It's almost like what comes to mind is kind of comfort measures classes or getting ready for delivery, partners working together in a class before delivery starts to realize how they like to be touched, what stretches work. And then the partner at least gets a list of, okay, she likes this, doesn't like this. And that's super valuable to know. So, because we want to help, we just don't necessarily know how. And the same thing's true then is, of just what you're saying, is that hopefully a woman has all these available help with friends, family, their partner. It's just a matter of getting over the hump of being okay and asking.
Or having someone, like most women have a baby shower or a mother blessing or baby blessing, having the person who organized that reach out for help. So, I think one of the postpartum traditions that's starting to happen is like having a meal train. So having people sign up ahead of time that are willing to bring you a meal. And that's a lot of coordination for a pregnant woman to do for herself. And I think it is legitimately kind of awkward to just be asking all these people to do things for you. And if that's not an exercised muscle, you can ask your sister or your friend or whomever was the organizer of the shower, hey, like during the shower, can you put together this meal train? Or there's even, I think it's mealtrain.org. There's like a computer, not a program, but you know what I mean, like a website that's put together that makes that really easy. So people can just sign up for times on that. And
what a fantastic shower gift, instead of things off of the registry, which are, beautiful gifts also, but to have like a meal train set up afterwards, I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah. And those are the gifts that women remember. They, yeah, we can remember the silver cup and silver spoon for the baby and all those things. But what women really remember is like sending someone to their house to give them body work after they have the baby, like a massage. In India, a woman gets a massage every day for 40 days after she has a baby. Same with Korea. And I work with a lot of women who are 12 weeks postpartum and they haven't even had any touch or massage or healing work since then. So, and you're giving so much touch and you're giving so much nurturing. The midwives talk about this time as mothering the new mother, that in the ways in which the mother is providing unlimited food for the baby, that the mother is nourished by food and food that she likes, and that goes along with the asking. Like when you're asking for the meal train, I've liked some people who've given actual meal ideas. Like one great meal for me is salmon, white rice, and spinach, or just being really directive about it so that you can get the kind of food that you actually want to eat,
Right.
And yeah, and then I think, as you mentioned, this having an established, maybe knowing your love languages, for instance, like if touch is a love language, or words of affirmation, or quality time, or acts of service, or gifts, kind of knowing that about your partner and knowing that this is going to be a time where women need recognition. Just like you're saying, everybody's wondering if they're doing a good enough job, and just women having the reflection that they have the right instincts and they're the right parent for their child. And the support in mothering the mother is not mothering the baby, but helping her become more confident in her own voice as a mother.
Which is going to allow her to just be a better mother to the baby, because she'll be filled up herself and be able to give that much more to the child. Or maybe not more, because they're already giving a ton, but to have it be in a different context.
Exactly.
Yeah, rather than depletion, but in a proactive sense of everyone's being nurtured here in this new experience.
And there's no amount of nurturing is going to neutralize the experience, because it's meant to be, it is a rite of passage. It's meant to give us soul information that allows for our growth and maturation. So just because a woman has weekly acupuncture and chiropractic and her mother-in-law staying with her and Ayurvedic food doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. And I find that women are really hard on themselves about that too. Like the women who are well-resourced are going like, oh my God, I'd be even so much worse if I didn't have this. And do I even deserve this? And why is it so hard? And it's like coming into it, knowing, our culture is terrible at tolerating discomfort. Our culture is so efficient in so many ways that we just don't have a lot of practice at tolerating discomfort. And so we think that if we're feeling discomfort, there's something wrong. But actually, when you're going through a major change, physically, emotionally, relationally, sexually, all of it, it's not going to be comfortable some of the time. There's going to be times when it's incredible and you're feeling a sense of connection and universality that you've never felt. And then there's going to feel times like it's a real descent, like you're diving down to a place where you haven't been before. And the best that we can do there is to have other voices reflecting that they see us, reflecting that it's okay, that we're gonna come back, and helping us to feel the richness of that, rather than like many of the voices in birth is like, oh, poor woman suffering, get her out of her suffering. No, not poor woman. This is a huge opportunity. Like, what an amazing thing that we get to live, that, you know, if you're on a spiritual path, like, you know, people orchestrate these kinds of rites of passage. Like, why do people do ayahuasca? So that they can freaking get deep down into what they want there to learn. But we don't have to do that as women. We get that built in with childbirth. It's just not, some people didn't sign up for it. They didn't realize that's what they were signing up for.
Right. And that might be quite the shocker that they're having difficulty getting through. Now, to circle back to that fourth trimester, I mean, it kind of implies it's this 3-month gig. And then once you're out of the 3 months, like, you know, everything's golden. What, in your experience working with women, or even as a mother, like what's a more realistic time frame for a woman to kind of wrap their heads around, to give a little space and ease around it, to, you know, really navigate these changes? I mean, obviously it's going to be different for every woman, but what have you found?
Yeah. Well, it's the $1 million question, and it's what every woman wants to know. They feel like if I can give them a deadline, then they can just sort of manage through to that deadline. And it is highly individual, and it also depends on what you're really looking at. What I look at is when I felt like I had my full prana, my full life force available to me. And for me, that took 6 years. Mm-hmm. But I also had a really specific, particularly difficult situation. So I didn't live in my country, my birth country of origin. I was in a new relationship that wasn't working out. I had this, you know, crazy birth injury. So I would expect that my recovery was longer than most is. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I feel like long-term vision, which I mentioned in our last talk, is huge, because for sure it's not 6 weeks. Let's just say that. 6 weeks is, I mean, expecting yourself to be any certain way at 6 weeks, and especially to be like neocortically functional, like able to work and produce something, is very unrealistic expectation. And, you know, some people say the fourth trimester, but the fourth trimester is really from the point of view of the baby, not really from the mom.
Right.
And then, you know, some people say 9 months, because 9 months is when most babies can crawl and sort of be independently mobile. And that's sort of the age that other mammals are born at. Like when a cow's born, after a couple hours, it can already stand up and walk to nursing and kind of get its own food source. Some people say at the end of nursing. So nursing is, you know, when your hormones start to regulate themselves a bit more, and then since you're not providing your own life force's food for the baby, you presumably have more of that available for yourself. So it really differs, but I find women are very hard on themselves in terms of feeling like they should be farther along in the healing process than they are.
Right. And it goes back to what you were saying, is that just the awareness that this is a process. All processes take time, and it's individual how long it takes to work through it, not to get over it, as you said, but to work through it. And
to digest.
Go ahead.
To digest it, to metabolize it.
Right. And I know with the healing work I've done with people over the years, is that people that are willing to be in what they're in and process it move through things much quicker than trying to just cover it up or ignore it. And as you said, like, our culture is so conditioned to just get out of discomfort, whether it's a pill or distractions or whatever. And that it's a paradigm shift to be in it, to be able to move through it.
Yes.
So with all of these resources that you've put through, I mean, really that sanctuary plan, I love that. You know, we talk a lot about birth plans as far as pregnancies, but your term of a sanctuary plan for the mom afterwards, and incorporating, you know, just assuming you're going to need more help and asking, the resource list on the fridge, the meal train, all of those things. How can moms listening, either if they're, you know, pregnant now and wanting to get started on this, or moms that might be in the middle of things, how can they contact you?
The best way is through my website, which is magamama.com. And if you just leave your email there, what you'll get right away is a Kegel visualization. So it's kind of demystifying Kegels, because everyone just says, do more Kegels, Kegels, Kegels. And so, yeah, that's the best way to keep in touch with me. And on my website itself, I write, and I have some articles there. So there's stuff on a postpartum sanctuary plan on there.
Okay, great. And I'll include that link in the show notes, and also on our website with the episode here. You may be listening to it on our website. You can click right through. So in our closing minute, Kimberly, what's the major take home you'd like a mom listening to this right now to come away with and to take to heart?
I would like the moms I'd actually like them to take an action and to ask someone for help today with something that they need help with. And that's really the only way to practice being able to do it, is by actually doing it. And, you know, I always say, if I ever have another baby, my first 2 months, I'm just going to ask all of my dearest girlfriends who live all over the world at this point, I'm going to ask them to come for weeks at a time. And, you know, I don't know if everybody's going to be able to do that and everyone has the resources and all that, but I think it would be, I try to do that for my friends, and it would just be so, imagine what that would be like to have your best girlfriend around who's cooking for you, cooking for your husband, taking care of your other food, or your partner, husband, or, you know, I was a single mom, so just taking care of me. And someone that really gets you, that can listen to you and can see what's happening and where you feel witnessed. And we don't just need that when we're a new mom. We need that all the time as women. And, you know, like Michelle Odon says, what's the best way to prepare women for childbirth? Have them be around other women. And then someone says, well, what's the best way to do this? Have them be around other women, which makes me just feel like, you know, as women, we need to be around and in the company of other women. And a lot of women have very contentious relationships with their own mothers. And our culture almost, you know, there's, like, for instance, in Brazil, where I lived for 8 years, if you don't have a good relationship with your mother, people are going to think they're not going to think that's great. They're not going to judge you for it, but they're going to wish that you did. Whereas here, it's kind of acceptable to push your parents away and kind of define yourself in opposition of your parents. And when you have a new baby, it brings up the mother wound or mother connection. And so the more that we can have mother-like people around, if not our own mother, the bigger the chance that we can really address that piece.
Right. And really to, as you said, to build the community around you, to have the support that you need, is to build that asking muscle and to start practicing to ask now, so that you don't have to be in a depleted state, in a crisis state, for people to start coming around you.
Yeah, and you know, maybe women who are listening are already, maybe they're not in the postpartum period. Maybe they have children who are 3 years old, but everyone still needs help. So there's still something that person could ask for that would help them out.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Kimberly, for all of this. I mean, it's really, there's tangibles that women can take action on right now, but then also just your vision and your just really just heart-centered communication and just being there for people really shines through. So I appreciate you being here again, and hopefully we can dive back into another subject like this on another episode.
Great. It's all great talking to you too, Jay.
Right. Take good care. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us today. For more information about this episode and other natural childbirth and parenting topics, please visit us at capwellnesscenter.com or message us on our Facebook page with any questions you might have. We here at the Cap Wellness Center look forward to helping you and your family be as happy and healthy as you can be.